Hello, Internet, and welcome to a very impromptu edition of My Friends Like Cool Shit. I'm here with one of my No Coast Defender co hosts and also one of my Battle of the Ballads co hosts, Mr. Daniel Candris, and we're going to talk about buying and reselling comic books. Dan basically makes a second living doing this, so it'll be a fun, informal discussion for you all. How you doing, Dan?
Good, good. It wouldn't be a Tuesday night without talking to you, my friend. So we had to get it going. And yeah, thanks for having me on this. I know that we normally discuss more traditional stuff, but I think this is actually gonna be a lot of fun and maybe informative for some folks. Maybe just like why the hell is this guy talking about it for others? And to be quite honest, there's a little something for everybody.
Yeah, and I think this is a good topic for anyone who's just collecting, as well as those who want to resell. And I know like cryptocurrency, which is something you are not into, but I think the speculation to this is similar with crypto or any other investments you're going to make. And I think it's pretty similar with the trading cards. I know these NBA playoffs have been interesting. At one point, when Devin Booker had a poor game, his rookie card values plummeted, and then he had a great game the next one, and they flew again. So I think with just some thought and common sense, I think a lot of things you're going to talk about here can apply to really any kind of investments.
Well, you're already touching on it there. If folks listen to us on No Coast, they know that I was championing Mephisto completely incorrectly for the entire time that we were talking about WandaVision. But at the same time, the Mephisto appearances skyrocketed in value and in price and what they were selling for on eBay. Even the simple dollar books started to gain value. So, as from an investor standpoint on those sort of things and the speculation, I personally had all those books and I made quite a bit of money selling those books because I knew that spec or whatever, we were going to see him down the line. It wasn't going to be as big as folks seem to think. So you really start to assess those. Is this a get rich quick scheme? Is it I want it for my personal collection because of its significance? Is it I'm going to spend 100 hoping to get 200, which will rarely ever happen on a comic book. And you mentioned that with the cards too. If you pull a Devin Booker rookie card out of a pack that you buy randomly, solid, sell it for whatever. But if you go out and spend that, I saw one go for 260 at the height of the season. You want to buy one for 260, think you're going to double that? Not a chance. So it's interesting to look at the speculation. It also depends on what title they're in, what else is happening. And when it comes to comic books, it's all about condition. So yeah, you can have an appearance, but if it's not a good condition, then it doesn't matter. Same with cards. Now that cards are being graded, they're judged much differently than just owning a card. Like you and I back in the day would have had a Kobe rookie, a Shaq rookie. Cool, I have this. And no matter what condition it was in, as long as it wasn't on a bike spoke, we're like, I got to have it. So it's a lot different now with the grading element.
I mean, until Christmas, I had a Kobe rookie that was in great shape. It is now upstairs on my brother Joe's shelf. So
I was just telling my buddy Eric, who's in our comic lounge, about how I gifted a Kobe rookie card as a wedding gift one time. And I did not like the person that much to have done that in hindsight.
well, and it's interesting, and I think this is probably pretty similar to comic books, but with that Kobe rookie, it's in really good shape. I never bothered getting it graded, mostly because it's been in a Tupperware box that has gone now through like 7 different states and is in great shape. No bent corners, no scratches or anything. But it's now in a little case and displayed. But like looking up its value, people are selling it anywhere from $80 to like 1,700, and it's
Yeah.
insane. Obviously, like the 1,700 stuff is graded, but then I'm seeing like $600 ungraded cards going. So, how do you judge the value of a comic book?
So I don't know how it happened, but I tend to be somebody that folks come to like, hey, should I grade this or not in the area? And I mean, I have as a prop here. Oh my God. Okay, I don't want the table at all. This is just the graded books I just got back. So I'm a big grader myself. I don't send things in if they're for value purposes. If they're going to be under a 9.6, the same would go for a card. So you want to look at the corners. You want to look at any visible damage. With cards, they don't really press. They do a cleanup. With comics, you can get a press. So you can get some smudges off. You can get a glue stain off. And really, you can go up like a whole one. I know I have a friend, Rich, who can press up like 1.5 grades, which is value-wise on comics is insane. So um, I look for creases, I look for blemishes, I look for corners. It's so hard to keep a trading card with perfect corners. So if you're talking the card game, you need it in a penny sleeve and then a hard stack, which a lot of people don't seem to realize. They just put it right in the hard case. And as you do that, it bends the corner of the card naturally. So um, there's a lot of that element that goes into it. The same with comic books. When you get it, you want to bag and board it, whether it's for your personal collection, reading ones, passing on, or grading. If you don't protect them, it's an investment loss. Now, I do want to premise all of this. I'm a collector first and foremost. I actually read the stuff I buy. I don't buy just to sell, but I often, if I think something's going to be of value, I'll buy two so I can sell one, keep one, or I'll buy three so I can grade one, keep one, sell one, because there's certain books I want my daughter to read. And there's certain books that are a lot of fun. Although, as I mentioned the other day, I've gotten much more into trades than I have single issues because A, I'm not liking a lot of art and stories, and B, it's more fun to read them all consecutively these days. But you have to really put your mind with what it is you want to be. So you mentioned the card boom. Many of the people in the card game now are looking to make money off it. They're not collecting it. They're not like, oh, I got this card, or oh, I'm excited because I get to look at this or have this. It's what can I get for it? And that's really what happened during COVID is people hit eBay because they had nothing but time and extra money coming in. And so it's like, how can I make a better investment? And I don't knock that at all, but I've seen a lot of poor investments as a result of that. For instance, the Captain America books from Falcon and Winter Soldier that, you had whatever iteration of Captain America you wanted to think about. Everybody was trying to spot the next one. They were sending them out for grading. So what happened to them? They still haven't got those book backs from grading, and we know what happens. So their speculation books are down the tank, and they're not even worth what they paid to grade them. So there's a lot of thinking and thought that goes into it that I don't think folks consider when they're just in it for the money. But when you're a longtime collector or somebody who collects and occasionally cashes in, it's about the long con, not the short game.
Now, those people who did foolishly send in those Captain America books, what do you recommend they do once they get them back?
It's tough. It depends on which issue it is. If it wasn't the first appearance of Sam as Captain America, sell it. If it wasn't first U.S. Agent, sell it. But knowing what we know about what we're going to get with U.S. Agent moving forward, you could potentially hang on to it. We've already seen them. So now you need to go Dark Avengers style and start looking at those. Those Cap books plateaued as quick as they rose. I'm talking week to week. So it's a tough one. I would sell it for what I can now. You're not going to recoup the cost, to be quite honest. And there are so many raw ones out there now that people post on eBay that you could sell your graded one, get a better grade raw for that cost, and then sit on that one and see what happens. And I would take that approach. I've done that with numerous books from that run and from Vision and Scarlet Witch because I saw books that were in better condition than the ones I had graded. I bought them cheaper with the money I sold from the graded ones, and I sent those in for grading. They were higher grades. So I won anyways.
Yeah. Now, I get the quality for grading, but what if you have like a poor copy of like Detective Comics 27 or even Action Comic 1? Do you get those graded even in the poor grade, just knowing how rare they are?
You have to. And the reason why I say that isn't for value. If you have those books, you're going to tend to sit on them and hope that the next generation either appreciates it or makes money off it, but you're going to grade them because they're just going to deteriorate by the day. So you grade as a means of preservation as opposed to a preservation of value, knowing full well that it's worth a shit ton of money. But you do it for preservation purposes at that point because it's beyond an antique, it's beyond a collector's item. It's just something so rare that nobody else will have.
Yeah, and those were just two. I think like X-Men #1 is another one that's super rare that kind of like fluctuates in value a little bit more than Action Comics #1, but I know if you can get a copy.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be pretty happy. Yeah, I mean, there's certain, you got Black Panther's first appearance, certain books that you just Werewolf by Night 32, First Moon Knight. There's certain books, no matter what grade you have, a 0.5 can sell for over $1,000. But not even selling wise, it's so rare that's why it sells for so much. So grading those books is more of a preservation because if you frame them, they're not always UV protected. They're not always sealed, correctly. So you can frame it, get your fingerprints all over the frame, then press your book in it and boom, you're screwed. So unless you're giving it the white gloves treatment and UV protection, every other protection, and something that's not breakable, I'd recommend just getting it graded for the $25. Well, it's gonna be a little bit more at that age and everything else, but still worth it.
Now I'm just going to throw characters I'm curious about that you think may or may not spike. The first one being Maya Lopez. I know her new Avengers like Ronin appearance, or maybe something as her Secco. You think, just speculating, once we get closer to Hawkeye, will those rise, or is the character just still too unknown?
Those have already started to rise within the last year due to speculation. Um, I wouldn't pay the price that people are asking right now, but once graded copies start selling, I would pay the raw price that people are going to start asking, because that's when the 8.5s are going to start to come out, and those are going to rise in value once they're graded, and then you might be able to trade up. So I say this as somebody who's been looking to get every copy I can find. I found a few raw. So I do have some out for grading, but I wouldn't reach too far on that one just yet, because it is going to come back down to reality. What happens is a lot of times they have their first appearances in the shows, and then people forget about them because of the next first appearance, and then people don't get the money back they thought they would, so they'll settle for a lower offer. And that tends to happen a lot. That's why, as somebody who does sell, I sell to the collector, not the flipper. So I tend to start with a lower offer anyways. If somebody messages me one and I know it's not a low ball, but it's lower than what I'm asking, which is always my intention, then I tend to go with them.
And I know we talked last night on the No Ghost Vendors about like the first appearances of like the Young Avengers, how they kind of trickled through. Speculating, what about like that Matt Faction Hawkeye run? Just because I know it's not the first appearance of Kate Bishop as Hawkeye, but do you think some of those could spike? Maybe even like the one where she moves out of Clint Barton's apartment?
Not too much. It's still a widely available series, like in back issues and things like that on shelves. So until that stock is eaten up, I don't think it'll be too much. Like I go box diving once a week, and I still pull some of those and I'll buy them. And it wasn't that hot. I think it's going to pick up in terms of people chasing it, but I think a lot of people are going to overpay, and then they're going to be like, well, shit, now I got to get rid of this, which tends to happen with a lot of that. So unless it's a first appearance from that group, there's really nothing noteworthy that's going to come of it, unless the MCU does something really different. And so if you have a creative mind and you kind of write the script of what you think is going to happen, then maybe, but not enough to reach for what people are charging.
So what you're saying, if I do find backup copies in a dollar bin, just sell the backup copies now?
No, sit on the backup copies now. Just don't go on eBay trying to get them.
Okay.
So you want to be the one on the other end on eBay saying, I have this, what are you willing to pay? But not the one sitting there with your debit card ready or drunk on a Friday night, like I've been many times. You're like, oh, cool, $40, gotcha.
Yeah, and people who caught my friends like cool shit with my former roommate Amy and former coworker knows we worked at a secondhand store, and I did pick up most of that early Faction run for $1 a piece at this store, because they sell all their comics at that store. So if you are in the Pittsburgh, like Ohio region, look for an exchange store. They sell comic books dirt cheap because they're not comic book folks. So they give like the people 15 cents in store credit and sell them for $1. And when people are just desperate to get rid of things, that's how they go. I personally would always tell comic book people, look, I'm going to give you 15 cents. Take it to a comic book shop.
Yeah, because at least at a comic book shop, if you collect comic books, you're going to get half, or you're at least going to get 50 cents. So
yeah, and I mean, I would try and flip through, and if anything caught my eyes, it might be valuable, I'd look it up. But other than, honestly, we got graphic novels that we thought were more valuable than a lot of the issues. I know, which does happen, especially like the Question graphic novels, which have been out of print forever. Like we had one that we were trying to sell for $85, and it was going for like $200 online at the time.
Yeah,
and it might be because it was like, it was the Question, like the definitive run, only available really in graphic novel and out of print. So,
well, and it's interesting with that because that's definitely a niche market, but it's one that's starting to open up more because, for instance, there's some Loki trades that were never in the comics, just strictly Loki, in trades that they could borrow from, and then people are gonna be like, well, where do I get this now? And they print so few of those. It's typically you had to order through a shop or bookstore or whatever. Online now, but there's so few available that it's like, well, how do I get my hands on that now? Just because it's that have to have mentality, and that's what drives the value up. Speaking of, when we talk about grades, we talk about have to have. I had a fun moment last year. Zoe and I collect Miles Morales books, and we have 3 of his first appearances in all Ultimate Fallout 4. I have 3 9/8s. And I was on eBay one night, just boozing on eBay, and as I shouldn't do. And there was an Ultimate Fallout 4 Mexico Comic Con Mole foil cover edition. I'm like, this can't be real. So I messaged my buddy Rich. I'm like, what do you think? He goes, even if it's not real, how cool is it to have a Mexican book in your comic collection that's Miles Morales and a foil cover? I'm like, you're right. So $60 shipped from Mexico. It comes and it's in a factory seal. Never been touched, never been opened. Just so I was like, all right, I think it's legit. So I sent it in to CGC through Rhinos, and I got it back. It's this right here. It might be a little shiny.
It's almost like it's got a foil cover. It's so shiny.
Yeah. So it's first appearance of new Miles Morales. I'm like, all right, cool, but it was still well after it happened. So I did a little research. There's only 1,000 of them, and they're going for about 1,200 a piece right now. And my intention with it, whether it was real or fake, was to sell it to buy Zoe some books. And then we decided we're going to keep this one too, because, and my daughter came up with this point, if there's ever one we really want, we have at least 2 Miles that we can get rid of and 2 to spare. So kudos to her for knowing how to play the long game. But it's also when there comes certain books like this, Ultimate Fallout 4 is never going to go down. And the fact that we're sitting on at least $7,000 right there, should anything ever happen, I mean, that's lowballing it. Should we put it for auction? So they're all 9/8s, and there's not many out there. So, I mean, the fact that you can have these investments and sit on them, that I could pass it on to my daughter for her to ultimately sell when I croak or she puts me in a home. You know, I mean, it's fun having these, especially when you know they won't go down. And so that's the difference between a spec book and a renowned book. Like Miles Morales was a new character that was introduced, and one that clearly wasn't going away, one that got his own series, an ongoing series, not just a mini series. And so that's kind of how you tell what characters to invest in too. And then when the movie came out, just it was over. You knew exactly what was going to happen. So,
and now there's been a plethora across comic books of new characters the last few years. What do you think the difference between like a Miles Morales versus Damian Wayne is going to be?
So the difference is if you have a completely new character or a new iteration of a character. Like Miles wasn't Spider-Man, and that's what's different. You know, when we had like Amadeus Cho, it was still Hulk kind of thing. Even when you got Miss Marvel, still Captain Marvel. I mean, different ethnicity, things like that. But it wasn't actually, she was a different variation. But it's more when it's a newer character, completely new backstory, and not just a play on a current character. That's going to have a long-lasting effect. And so when he came out in Ultimate Fallout 4 in a completely different series that was meant to last, it's evident. So the big difference is how long is this going to last? Did they just make the character a different gender? Did they just make them a different ethnicity for 5-arc run? Did they just give them one cool moment and they're gone? You know, I mean, we have a lot of variants like that just don't last, and that's where the staying power goes. It's just one of those things where you can tell the staying power of one character when the advertising's there. The lead up to it, the fact that they're on the cover, you know, that's how first appearances always were. Even with Squirrel Girl's first appearance, you know, Squirrel Girl completely different. So that's a first appearance that matters much more than just different gender of a version of a character or a different ethnicity or anything like that. Is this a totally new character?
Well, is Squirrel Girl the only character you're looking out for in Great Lakes Avengers?
Yeah. And the reason for that is because she is such a hyped character that they haven't given her to us yet. And when they do, that book is just going to skyrocket more than it has now. And not to mention, it's one of the worst introductions of a character ever. Like, terrible premiere issue, but such a hot issue that I even have a water-stained one that somebody offered me $150 for. So, you know, it's just one of those issues you got to have, the Marvel Superheroes one there.
And I just kind of find that interesting because, especially with that first appearance, there's not much that sets Squirrel Girl apart from a lot of the other, honestly, like at the time, D-list characters. I know she's definitely risen in popularity. So to speculate on that, what are you going to look for? What are you going to look for with a D-list character who has the potential to become something? Are you just looking for maybe a writer who's expressed interest in that character that you think would do a good line with it?
You really look at the potential. Well, it's different now as opposed to before. You know, back in '91 when Squirrel Girl came out, there was nothing like her. So it's like, okay, this is going to be long lasting. And then the movie and show world kind of changed everything. You know, even Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan, who Zoe I absolutely love, didn't have the value and hype she did until the series was speculated, and then those books just shot up. Captain Marvel 14 became like an unattainable book, you know. So it's interesting how the TV and movie market have changed it, but it's still going to be that character with the underground popularity or the staying power in the comics. So if they didn't have a solo run, yeah, they might appear in stuff like the X-Men movies that Sony shit out every year.
You mean Fox? Wrong studio.
Yes, Fox shit out every year, and the Sony ones with you know, Spider-Man characters and all that shit, like random characters in these movies. Didn't have a lot of staying power in the comics, so their first appearances weren't really that hyped. You didn't hear about the comic buzz until the MCU came about, you know, for a reason. So a lot of that has to do with the staying power of the character, but also the idea that it can go much further. So if a series goes further, then the villains that appear in those comics become, you know, possibly worth more. And so that's where the staying power comes from. You know, when you have new villains introduced, like in a Miles series, and you get a Miles movie, there's potential to see Miles character, or Spider-Gwen, you know, which we saw in Into the Spider-Verse. So it's really about what's this whole universe going to be from the comics to the screen, and will I see these characters on the screen? Because if I do, I'll make my money back.
Are we going to see a Gwenpool coming on the screen?
I believe so, which is why I'm sending you a Howard the Duck #1. We sure will. That's not even a question. It's how much of and how much of a joke is it. But we definitely will, and that's the only reason why Howard the Duck #1 is anything, why so many people are after it. But it's still an attainable $40 book right now.
Which is insane because Howard the Duck is just like a great character, but I think he becomes more of a punching joke because of that movie. So it has a reverse effect there.
Yeah, they came out with a movie when we weren't ready for a movie, although I do love that movie myself.
It's campy fun. It really is.
Spoiler, you also have a Howard the Duck annual #1 in your box that's coming out to you too. So I think you have 1 through 6 of the new series, and then his old annual where he appeared. So those are all fun. But yeah, the Gwenpool, it's just a funny thing to chase right now. I know at least 4 of us are sitting on about 7 copies of that. I have 6 of them graded, and I also have a 9.6 that I picked up for $30 at a flea market. So it's just a fun one because if it explodes, awesome. And if not, I can say I have this many books.
My only hesitation with Gwenpool is, where does she fit? Is she coming in Sony's Greater Spider-Verse, or is she going to be in the Deadpool films?
It'll definitely be in the Deadpool films, but I also see Howard the Duck making an appearance. You know, the MCU's hinted at him on multiple occasions at this point.
We have seen Howard the Duck.
Yeah.
Voiced by Seth Green, which is just really good voice casting there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the allusion to him and the fact that James Gunn has wanted to do something with Howard the Duck for a while. I wouldn't be surprised if we got a holiday special or a series or something. I don't think it'll be a recurring thing in the MCU, but I wouldn't be surprised. And if it's through Deadpool too, then that'd be a unique way of doing it. But also a fun and interesting way, you know, and it's a joke in itself. So matching it with the Deadpool series would work. It's just one of those things, you know, we're going to see regardless of how it happens. We just know it's coming. So, and that's a first appearance that's so cheap, but it's also one of the most widely speculated books right now. So the fact that it stays so cheap is quite interesting to me, but that's also why, because I know that you love Howard the Duck, I'm getting it to you now before, and I predicted by November of 2022, it becomes a big book. And I've said that for the last 2 years now for November 22, simply because of the scheduling and the TV series schedule. I was looking at all of that, but I was also looking at the fact that I saw like a Howard the Duck variant last year on a comic book, and he just keeps popping up in the Marvel comics, random appearances, random pictures. So my spidey sense is tingling.
Well, and since he was a teaser in the Guardians film, if they were to do a Rocket offshoot, which I definitely think there will be, they could definitely tie him in there, because now you've got 2 animal creatures. I know their backstories are completely different, but that doesn't matter.
I just think when it comes to that universe, you can have a lot of fun. And I think that's what Guardians built on. That's even what, you know, his cameo showed, is that we can have a lot of fun with this character. And I wouldn't be surprised if he appears in the holiday special, to be quite honest, the Guardians holiday special. I said that a while back, and then somebody's like, oh, that would make a lot of sense. So
yeah, especially because we have no plots for the holiday special other than that it's a holiday special.
And it's supposed to be a mockery of the Star Wars one
Yeah.
that was done so many years ago. So what better character to bring in to do that? And I kind of said that as a group of us were talking, and a lot of heads nodded. So I do see it coming. I said November 2022. If I'm off by a few months, I'm sorry, but that's where I'm at for a spike in that book. And we can come back on this date, on that month, and we can look at it on eBay from now till then.
I like that idea. I want to move off from Howard the Duck, but I just have one more question to just help people into where your mind is when it comes to speculation.
Mhm.
Because for folks that don't know, Howard the Duck is very adult oriented. The character's gruff like an everyday man, and he's not cartoony for children. So if they go a cartoony route with the Howard the Duck project, do you think that'll tank speculation?
It won't tank speculation, but it'll have the MODOK effect, where it's not as sought after, but it exists, and you're gonna have that niche market that's all of a sudden like, this is fine. I like this. I want that appearance. And as more become in demand, the volume starts to go up as lesser there, because we can track on Go Collect how many CGCs are out there. So if you start to see like a ton are out there, then you see sales spike, you're like, oh, I better get this book, because I'm not gonna have a chance at it. So there's a reason why, because I've been prepared for that, but there's a reason why I grab it every time I see it. But there's also a reason why I gift it to so many people, because I know down the line they'll be able to sell it for something else if they want something else. In November of 2022, nodding. So it's a fun book. Sometimes my friend Rich and I we'll get drunk and oops, just ordered another Howard the Duck. It's a running joke, but we know it's going to pay off in the end.
Yeah, I like that you say that, gifting it, because people are going to make money, knowing full well that as one of the people you're gifting it to, I won't sell it. So
usually the people I gift it to won't sell it. It's interesting, as somebody who has had an eBay shop, has made, I just cleared $1,000 on Saturday, makes a lot of money selling comics. I'm not in it to make money. I'm in it to look at the highest price, the middle price, the lowest price, sell lower than that to somebody who's simply collecting. And so, I do make a lot of money on speculating, but I still make way less than the flippers, because I'm also trying to help out at the end of the day. I have somebody on a payment plan with me for $100 where he gives me $1 a week, until we get there. And I don't even track it. I won't even know when we're there. He's tracking himself. And
so hopefully he's not watching this video.
Well, to be quite honest, I tell him that all the time. He's like, oh, I got to get you. I'm like, $1 on PayPal, I don't, whatever. And I said, to be quite honest, the fact that you mention this book often, you read it often, it's already paid for itself. I don't need the money. Anybody who actually knows me knows that that's not what I'm all about. And you see my claim sales, you see how many people claim, you see the trust that's there, and you see the deals that are there. And that's just how I think business should be done. I don't think it should be about getting top value for comic books. I think it should be, hey, I've read this once. I really enjoyed it. It's now up in value. Let's meet in the middle for what I spent and, what you're willing to pay for it. And I think that's more than fair. But what a lot of people don't know is a lot of the stuff I sell isn't even mine. I run claim sales for so many people for so many different reasons. I've had a friend who a couple years ago had stuff wrong with their car, and they're like, what do I do? And I said, let me sell your comic books. And so I sold the comic books. And I paid for, their car. I have a current person that I am selling an entire lot for who lost her son, has the collection, didn't know what to do with it, got offered $50 a box. I said, whoa. And I just cleared $1,000 this weekend for her, so I'd much rather see the money go to a good cause than in my pocket because I was able to buy 20 copies of a book and didn't let other people get it. And that's my biggest gripe is, and I've kicked people from our group for it because I see them, hey, I bought 20 books, come to me before you can't get these. And it's like, well, no, fuck you. There's kids out there trying to read this stuff. Like there are people who legit read these things weekly and you're making it so they can't get it off the shelf. Like that's not cool at all. That's not being a comic collector. It's being a dickhead.
And I can remember that very clearly. I think it was like the War of Carnage run, like early. I remember someone having 20 copies of that and then them being gone. So
yeah, no, I don't tolerate that. I don't stand for it. Not in any community I build, and not even in my collecting community. I have these Gleason covers that are out right now. I see them getting flipped on eBay. I order an extra one every time. And if somebody says, hey, did anybody get an extra? I say, yeah, I have it, $5 because that's what I paid for it. If we're 6 months down the road and like somebody's like, do we have it? That's a little different to me because it's like, yeah, I had an extra and how about $15 as opposed to the 80 on eBay, so that's me doing business. It's me taking a 60% loss just to help somebody else out. And to be quite honest, I have a full-time job. I have the books I want and I'm perfectly content doing that.
And I like that you say the $5 you paid for but the case of my brother looking for one of the Sam Wilson Captain America pops that sold out, and you'd had an extra copy you're sending him. So
Yep. I watch the shipping every day. As soon as it gets here, it's joining that box. I mean, I'd much rather do that. And I also buy and sell pops. I a shit ton of them. I run a Funko group with a couple of friends. And over the years, we've been more about helping people get them than selling them. We order extras to help each other in the community because we know how the flippers are. Um, it, it's just the way to be a collector. It's so toxic in our nerd community, and it's so small. I know that there's so many people that buy, but when you think about it, at the end of the day, it's such a small community. If we were all better to each other and better with helping each other get what we want, imagine the trades you could pull off as opposed to the money you're trying to seek that you don't get and losing out on an investment. I've helped so many people out, and I post like, hey, Zoe's looking for this book, and next thing you know, there's 3 waiting in my folder at Rhino's Comics without people telling me, just they randomly left it because at some point I helped them out with something. I'd much rather have a community like that than how can I get rich off of this.
yeah, and that makes
a lot of people just can't seem to wrap their mind around that because there's so much value attached to it. But I think there's more value in humanity than a PayPal exchange that's going to just get reversed sometime down the road.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense to me. I know we just one day were casually talking on Zoom, you, my brother, and I, after filming another video about the pops you had just sold. And I just kind of, out of curiosity, looked up what some of mine were going for. And I'm like, man, like I have an Orville from the Rescuers that's going for like $700 out of the box. And I'm like, oh, okay, mine's in the box and in good shape. And then I have like the animated Robin Hood that was going for a couple hundred out of the box. And I'm like, well, now I feel less bad about the fact that my box is damaged. But I mean, like, I'm never getting rid of those. Like Robin Hood's my favorite Disney animated film.
Well, and it's interesting. So I have like Jeanette and Tim, Tim well. They gifted me a Yondu, and I'd been wanting this Yondu pop, couldn't find it. Everybody's like $100. And then the Funko group we found together one Christmas season, they gathered up like the 5 pops I was looking for. I was looking for an Elvis Stitch for the longest time because Zoe has every single Stitch pop except that one at the time. And they just gifted me this box of pops because I helped build this community where we just helped each other out. And to me, that says way more than like, hey, let me see how much I can sell this for. I mean, the woman I'm selling the comics for right now, she had a huge pop lot that her son had too. There was some $200 pops in there that I was able to sell to somebody for like $75 because they really wanted it for their collection, like a you type of person, just wanted it for your collection. I'd much rather do that than try and go full value on it. And she still got something out of it. Somebody else got something out of it. And at the end of the day, there were smiles exchanged, not money,
Yeah. And as a guy, I like to say I don't collect pops. I just buy pops that I really like. And it's kept me under 40 pops. And I don't even look at the new stuff. Like I didn't buy the How I Met Your Mother or Always Sunny pops that came out, mostly because pre-orders went quick for those. So maybe one day I'll run into them secondhand, but I don't collect. And same thing like with records for me. I've got a couple records that have increased in value since I bought them. And it's just like, I'm not going to stop from putting those on the turntable.
Yeah. It's interesting. Just recently, I threw away some of my boxes, which is unheard of in the collecting community. So it's more along the lines of I just buy pops, I don't collect them, where you throw away boxes, which is how I started until I realized the value of some of Zoe's Teen Titans Go pops. But I've gotten to the point now where I don't collect pops because I'm not chasing the whole series. I'm chasing what I like. And I don't care if I have the box or not because they're going to die with me or until my wife kicks me out and I have to sell them out of necessity. But like I have the whole Black Panther run. You know how much I love Black Panther. I'm not about to just get rid of those pops at any point. Yes, I know when Chadwick died, people tried to capitalize on the pop sales. Luckily, I had 3. And so I had a little kid who was looking for one. And I didn't say to his mom, hey, how much can you give me for it? I said, hey, here it is. So it's and I P4P New York right here. Obviously, we have Black Panther fans. So I saved some of the Black Panther doubles that I did have after that. And I gave them out to the kids last holiday season. I'd much rather do something like that than get money for this stuff. I never saw the reason why something that came out a year ago for $8.99 is all of a sudden worth $100. It just doesn't make sense in my book, and it never will. And I know that values in the eye of the beholder, all that stuff, but I'd rather get a smile in return than some money.
I remember years ago, there was like a Target exclusive Batman variant run of pops that came out.
There was.
And my Target did not sell them for shit. And they were just like on our back wall for forever until a collector in the local area like found them, and then they were gone within minutes. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I kind of looked them up, and they were just going for so much. And these people did. They bought them for $8.99 at Target, and I'm just like, man, had I known that, I could have gotten my 10% on that. And I think what you're saying is correct about like the humanity, but I would not mind gouging gougers, but those people aren't going to spend that money on it anyway. So
Well, so there's a Cara Dune pop that I had from my Star Wars collection, and the second that the fallout happened, everything happened, and they were like, "We're not making toys and pops of her anymore." I made a conscious decision when I started my eBay store. I put it up there, and the first bid was $70. I was like, "All right, cool." But my return for that was whatever I made off of that, I was going to turn around and go to my local comic shop and buy toys for kids for our charity for. So I'm turning something, I hate the whole capitalizing on death thing, but I'll capitalize on somebody getting fired for something that I was all right with
yeah,
and turning that into kid smiles. And so I ended up selling that for $126, which meant I got to buy $126 worth of toys for kids. And I will happily do that any day because some flipper's willing to pay that thing. They're going to get 300. And then after I sold that, because it was one of the highest sales, it went stagnant. So I had one of the last high sales on eBay of that. And then it was like, holy shit, somebody really just paid that. All right, let's back off a little bit.
yeah. I'm never spending. I don't want to say I'm never spending that much money. I have a couple $60 records that I have spent, but I don't like the idea of spending that much money on a thing in general because I'm just collecting. I have a couple books that range anywhere from $100 to $900 online, depending on who's selling them, and they're never going anywhere. They're going to stay on one of my bookshelves.
I see something here in my stat. Um, so I often say that, but then I have a big sale, and then I turn around and I buy something like this for my daughter's box. Moon Girl Devil Dinosaur 1. It was limited print to begin with. It's a run that was finished. It's a character that we haven't seen much of, but we know is going to come in the future. It's a book that graded already, it's unattainable. I happened to find a raw copy, which I thought was a 9.4 based on the eBay pick. So I offered a little bit lower, citing what I saw in the pictures. And the seller was like, yeah, I'll knock $30 off. So I got the book for $50 raw. Came back graded as a 9.6. I didn't press it, so I didn't have to spend an extra 15 on it. And it's now going for quite a bit of money. And so to me, that was a solid investment. I look at $50 for a modern comic is quite a bit, unless it's Ultimate Fallout 4 or something like that. So, I look at those things as how much I'd spend, because 9.6, I probably would have spent $100 to have that in her collection. But then I also look at the fact that we sold a couple Shuri books, and then we got the first appearance of Princess Fisk in Moon Girl Devil Dinosaur, which is already a sought after line. We spent 110 on it with a 9.8 grade, and we saved our money on pressing, grading. And so if you think about it that way, you already saved $40. So you really didn't spend that much on it, but it's already doubled that value. So it's interesting to think, like, would I spend that much? But then you think about the return that you could potentially get. Should you hit hard times, or should you need to? So it's a moral dilemma I have every day. Like, for instance, I think you saw the conversations about me chasing a Black Panther 2 Shuri's first appearance.
Yes.
I had, which is right here. But at one point, 2 years ago, it was going for $50 raw. And I'm like, why would you pay that much for Shuri's first appearance? Knowing full well she becomes the next Black Panther, knowing full well that it's going to have implications down the road. 50 seemed like a lot to me. And then I saw it go to 100. And I was like, is this a book I got to grab now? And then Chadwick died, and then the rumor mill started, and then it became a $300 book raw. And I'm like, holy shit. So I sold my Eternals lot, and I bought an 8.5 copy. I then sold an 8.5 copy and another book, and I was able to buy 2 raw ones that are at least 9.6s. And then with money I had left over, I bought another 8.5 copy. So I think I look at it as, what do I have in the tank? I know I'm rambling about it a little bit, but it's, what do I have in the tank that I could kind of be a trade-off? So I'm not necessarily spending that much. Because
And I think that's the difference. Like, you're not spending real money. You're spending the hypothetical money from the books you had sitting around, which I think you're essentially just stock trading in comics.
I am. Somebody said that to me recently, and I was like, wow, for all the shitting I do on all this stock stuff, you're right. Because he was shitting on me for like my take on crypto, and I was like, yeah, whatever. He's like, you do it with the comics. I'm like, well, fuck, but at least mine's paying off a little better in lifetime so far. No, it's interesting, and I know that I take it as a hobby, but I also look at it. You know, when we were kids, we loved trading cards. You know, that's why they're called trading cards. We love doing all that stuff. So in some sense, I still consider it just adult trading, or stock trading, however you want to look at it. But if you know what the investment looks like, if you're able to see a return on something, then it's not too much. You know, to get started, it's an investment, but for anybody starting collecting now, picking up books, even like modern era books are becoming keys somehow. You know, the Venom run that just came out introduced us to various characters that all of a sudden became keys, which in a modern age with something that's 1 to 2 years old, that's so bizarre. Um, but it's you don't want to miss those in this generation because there are so many people sitting back on silver and bronze age books laughing at all of us collectors chasing them because they're like, I bought this for a quarter when I was a kid at a garage sale. And we're like, well, take my $275 and then shut the fuck up because that's where it's at. And so our generation is now trying to be those guys when we're older. And the MCU is only adding to that.
It's you said the interesting thing about the modern books becoming keys so quickly, and I think that's due a lot with I know a lot of the NBA personalities I follow have either always collected basketball cards or are now just following it for like shits and giggles because it's so interesting to them. Yeah. And it comes up with basketball cards. One of the specific reasons is just that the sneakerheads have now gotten into cards and they were spending thousands of dollars on Jordans. So of course they're going to now spend hundreds of dollars on basketball cards. They have that money to burn. But the other thing I hear a lot, and I think it applies to comic books and pops, and honestly the resurgence of records as well, is that we loved these things as kids and now we have money, so we're willing to spend it. So I think that helps with the value of a modern comic quicker because we didn't grow up out of this stuff. Like the narrative was we were supposed to grow out of comic books. We were supposed to grow out of sports cards. And there's so many in this generation that haven't, that I think that helps the modern value of books.
So to speak, one night you're just drunk and you get the first appearance of Cloak and Dagger because you're an adult collecting comics with money. You're spot on with that. You know, we were trying to replace stuff that I was talking to Lauren's brother the other day. He's talking about how he gave away all his comics at one point or sold them for $30. And it's like, we're chasing the stuff we got rid of over the years. We're chasing the stuff that we couldn't have. I mean, I was a poor kid with a cooler for a refrigerator. I didn't have this shit. I just looked at everybody else's comics. And when I could finally get them, they're from garage sales and stuff. And they were some of the things I toted around with me for years, even after I moved out at 15. You know, like I had my comic books and my CDs in a book bag. So we're replacing the stuff of years past, basically. And it's just so fun. And yeah, some of us do have the money to do it. But the unfortunate thing, and I've actually thought about starting a class for this, is I've seen a lot of younger people, probably from the 20 to 25 range, who have received the extra unemployment. They've gotten all this last 18 months. And so they've turned around and they've spent it on comics, pops, cards, all this stuff, thinking that it's a sound investment. But when all of that extra funding for everybody goes away, the money train stops, the value goes down, and then you only have, the high rollers playing if they're willing to invest in it. A lot of them have been making money on people making bad investments. And I've really hoped that these people buying all these large stocks of flippers get stuck with those fucking cards and they cannot move them at all. And that they eventually show up as single cards on eBay in the next year, which I'm sure they will, for much less the value. And I know it's going to happen. I just wish that so many people I knew didn't fall for it now, thinking like, oh my God, it's the next big investment. When I know full well that that's not going to be the case. I know a lot of people who run, the card clinics, the shops, who go to the shows. Their clientele isn't typically your 20 to 25-year-old with a job at GameStop. It's somebody who rolls in with a lot of cash and is willing to spend. And so the fact that they've been able to prey on this certain generation at this moment really sucks because they're going to be out a lot of money, out of excitement. And in some cases, it's just going to be a ruined experience for a lot of people.
Well, and beyond that, the fact that Targets and Walmarts are no longer selling cards in store, you have to order them online because fistfights and armed robberies. I mean, this is insane because as much as I love that we can still do this, when I lived in Orlando with a couple of my best friends, like 9 p.m. Target run before they closed, buy a couple of packs of basketball cards each, and then we would trade, but we could only trade within the cards we bought that night. And it was just this fun game we played, and $10 you'd get 3 packs. But now, of course, I see packs of cards are $10 a piece because of this boom. And I'm like, I would love to score a Zion Williams rookie card, but I don't want to spend $10 to get 3 Rajon Rondos when I wanted Rondo a decade ago.
I've been chasing a ball rookie card all season just because I want one, just to have it. I don't even care what brand it is. I just want one, and I can't even buy a pack of cards in my area.
Yeah,
and
I do have a Zion college card, which does
Well,
have some value, but not quite what a Pelicans jersey Rondo or Zion would have been. But like,
yeah, it's unfortunate too. And when I saw the card boom starting during the pandemic, it's when I started my eBay shop, and I put up Marvel Masterpieces lots, various years. I was watching them go for $100. I was like, Jesus Christ! Like, I've had these for years. I wax papered them shut. And then I remember a couple of years ago, before it all started, I saw sets for like $25 each. I'm like, why not? Maybe someday the kids will want to go through them to see, what fun characters are in there. And 2 years later, I'm putting those up on eBay for a shit ton of money. And I'm like, people aren't going to make their money back on this. And so locally, I know some people reach out like, hey, you got any more of those cards? Like, freaking like itching for me. You got any more of those cards, man? I was like, yeah, but I'll just give them to you. Like, shit, don't go out paying $200 for cards that came out in the 90s that aren't going to be worth anything past this year. It breaks my heart to see it. And no matter how much guidance I think I'm giving on it or advice I think I'm giving on it that's helpful, people just don't listen. And so it sucks to see. And I think that we're going to see a totally different mindset by the end of this year, with things changing as far as the pandemic goes and things like that. Disposable income is not going to meet the higher cost of living we're all seeing. So a lot of those trends are going to change. A lot of stuff's going to be started being sold cheaper, in person as opposed to online. It's going to drive down a lot of sales, and all these people who got a leg up, good for them right now, but it's not your cash cow. I hope you save some money. And it's quite sad to see, but it'll be a lesson learned for a lot of people, an unfortunate lesson too.
All right, now I just want to kind of throw some characters out at you that I know are in the works. So Nightwing film is in the works, Batgirl series in the works, but there's a plethora of both characters out there. Is the first appearance of Dick Grayson as Nightwing gonna jump in value, or?
That's been a coveted one to begin with, as a lower print run to start with. So series aside, as far as that book in particular goes, it's always been a hot one. It's definitely heating up now. If you look at it in the last 2 months, there have been more CGC like graded books hitting the surface, which means sellers about to come out. So definitely a book to chase. Second appearance, a cheaper route to take. So when all the first appearances are gone, you can get the second one cheaper now than you will down the road. Kind of like, I think of it as Werewolf by Night 32, 33. 33 is now super hot because nobody can get 32. So in that case, I'd say grab first and second. Both were low print runs. Conditions probably beat up on them because nobody thought second of it. And if you can get a second appearance graded already, I would just go that route and save yourself some money down the road.
What about Barbara Gordon appearing as Batgirl, or just Barbara Gordon appearing as Barbara Gordon?
So the Barbara Gordon appearance has already run its course due to speculation.
Okay.
Appearing as Batgirl, that like Barbara Gordon's already peaked, but appearing as Batgirl, I think that would definitely have some legs. And that's one I'd buy pre-graded, because when it comes to a lot of those DC books, that was pre-cardstock covers. And DC collectors at the time just read the shit out of those books. So I'd really try to get one that's already graded, because you can't trust the condition from a picture. You're going to end up overpaying for it, I feel like, if you do it on eBay. If you're at a local shop and they have a raw one for a certain price, you have a chance to look at it and things like that. I would definitely go that route if you're not going to buy a graded one.
And first appearances decide. What about like the first issues of either their first miniseries or their first ongoings? You wouldn't bother with those?
No.
And what about like you get Stephanie Brown, aka Spoiler, does a run as Batman, Batgirl. Do you think any of those other characters playing Batgirl would?
Not unless they reoccur later, because if you look at a character with an expiration date, it's going to mean nothing.
So stay away from Stephanie Brown at all, since she's consistently written out of the Batman history and back into it, which is a shame, because Spoiler was great. She was great as Robin. She was great as Batgirl. She's back to being great as Spoiler. So
the thing is, if you look at what DC tends to do, if they fuck it up, then all the value is gone to begin with. And I'm not even saying that as somebody who doesn't like DC. I'm saying it as somebody who's seen people speculate on these books and have them drop completely. And the problem when it comes to the DC runs is, as you just mentioned, these characters have 50 different lives at the same time. So there's nothing consistent to stick with. Whereas Marvel, it's just, here's our series that we're with. Here's this appearance. You'll see him again later. And so it's much different than how they do things now. The Barbara Gordon's background is a little different, but if Poison Ivy became Batman, all right, pick that up. But otherwise, for her 50th series that's at the same time, what's the point?
Yeah, and I mentioned Damian Wayne as Robin earlier, and I think that was harder too because there's been 6 Robins. But I know I've seen the first 2 Robin miniseries, which were the Tim Drake, who is the first one to get his own. I've seen that those have held their value quite well, but like Tim Drake as Red Robin or as Drake in the Teen Titans isn't going to do anything for you.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's got to be the first time we see that character. That's why the first as something doesn't matter much, except for first Jane Foster, simply because we're going to see a female Thor in a movie now. That's a little different, but DC just made it super tricky for the collector because outside of the early shit, every character, you don't know which version you're reading, like which Earth are you on, like where do they appear? And then you also, for DC, you had the cartoons, the video games, the movies, the reboot of the movies, the reboot of the movies, the reboot of the reboot. So you don't know what characters you're getting at that point. So they make it very difficult. And it's obviously not intentional, but it's really difficult for the collector of DC to know what to do. Outside of like a first Harley, first Joker, a first appearance as Robin for any of them is important because at some point Batman's not going to be as, important to the story as a Robin character will be because there have been so many offshoots. And we're now seeing a generation of readers who are much more interested in the Robin arcs than the Batman arcs because they started doing, the Nightwing stuff and all that stuff. So if you look at a lot of the releases, yeah, it's Batman, but if you look at the covers, it's not Batman on the cover. So there's a reason in branding for that, but it's also creating a new audience.
Yeah, that makes sense. You'd mentioned first Harley Quinn, and she's the most notable exception of this, but what about characters that have debuted in a television show or movie and then make their way to the comic books? Do you think there's an increased valuable, like Diggle from Arrow became a Green Arrow character in the comic books?
There never was, and I don't want to say there never will be, but it's more of a niche thing. So I have a friend who is a huge Green Arrow fan, not because of comics, but because of the show. So if he were to get that comic, it'd be worth something to him. And so if you find that buyer, yes, but if a comic has to backtrack to match the screen, the value is not really there unless they become an iconic character in the comics. Like Diggle's never going to be in the comics what he is on the screen because on screen he's fucking fantastic.
Right,
but in the comics,
he's going to become a Green Lantern on screen too.
Right, and I mean, in comics, it's an afterthought when you add him when they've already been introduced, as opposed to here's this new character and then we see it on the screen.
So Harley is that rare exception.
One of the few. I really can't think of many others.
I mean, those are the only 2 ones I could think of, notable off the top of my head that might even. So
yeah, it's hard to think of others because, I mean, Harley took off so much in the cartoon and everything else too. The timing, just everything was perfect for that moment. But it was also before that superhero hype. It was before the comic book hype. So it's where it was graphic novels, cartoons, comics. And so it's a much different level than it is now, where Diggle on the CW is much bigger than Harley on a Fox cartoon. It's a lot different.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. I kind of figured that was going to be your answer. I like what you said for that collector, and that's something we dealt with working in a secondhand store is just because one person sold one copy of something for something online doesn't mean it's worth that, and it doesn't mean at a random, especially my store was video games, movies, and music. So if you brought in your valuable action figure or toy, I know someone brought in a Ninja Turtles Michelangelo to 1/18th scale that online is selling for $200, and I'm like, I'm going to put it at 100 and it's going to sit here for the next year because I need the right person to walk in that has $100 to spend on a Turtles toy.
For instance, I'm a big Scotty Young fan. You also know I hate the modern X-Men books, but there was an eBay bundle for $150 for these 2 books that sat there. Offered $125. Did I overpay? Yeah, because they're worth $50 combined. But I had them sitting in my grade bin, both at 9.6s. I plan to do a whole wall of Scotty Young 9.8s at one point. So I'm that one person who's going to go out and buy these books. And then if my wife knew, she'd slap me in the face. But I'm the person
It's
that's
a
going to
good
buy
thing she doesn't watch any of your YouTube stuff.
She doesn't. She doesn't want anything to do with it.
I know this.
But so it's one of those things that you talk about the Michelangelo statue. You know, I'm that person. If it was a Scotty Young book, I'm going to walk in. Oh, only $100. All right, cool. I'll take it because to me, it's worth that much. So it's an interesting route with that. It's interesting the collectors we have now that have emerged over the last few years, because now I'm seeing people buying for value and then trying to sell for value, but they're doing it in groups where we're all collectors and actual collectors, not value collectors, where we see the value when we get a 9.6, 9.8 book back, or even, you know, a classic book at like a 5. I got Adam Warlock back at a 5, and I was like, oh, it's amazing. Whereas somebody else looking at it trying to resell, they're like, well, that's not going to be worth much. No, but it's worth a lot to me because I have it in my possession. So it's interesting to see the split there, and to see the new people coming to the field trying to sell to us who have been in for years, thinking that they're going to get one up on us when we'll literally just give something for free to somebody else just to spite that person.
That makes sense. I would be terrible at what you do simply because I don't care about the monetary value in most things. So I'm the guy, and I've told you this story before, but I'll trade you 2 Michael Jordans and a Scottie Pippen for 7 Sean Kemps and 3 Gary Paytons every day of the week, because I don't care that the Jordans I did hold on to are now worth like $50 a piece ungraded.
Yeah.
Whereas my Sean Kemps and Gary Paytons are worth a couple dollars a piece. Like, I know what I like, and it's the Seattle Supersonics in the mid-90s.
And they need to make a comeback. And I've been chasing the mascot pop for you for a while, and I can't get my hands on one that's actually in a box. But I've always been somebody who, what's it's worth to me, unless it's something I know I can sell in the future to get something for my daughter or myself. You know, as she starts to collect more, I'm like, I have these books I don't give a shit about. I saw somebody sell them for 150. I'll put it up for 60 and see if I can move it. You just watched my most recent claim sale, or at least saw that it existed.
I looked through it. There was some stuff I'm like, okay, that, like, not knowing much about this, I know he's really underselling. You had a lot of books going for like $1 to $5, and I'm like,
yeah, I mean, I sold
for way more.
I sold at least a 9.6 First Bishop for $40 with about 20 other X-Men books from that lot. I sold Omega Red 9.6 for $50 with at least 10 other books with it. Price to move for this woman that I'm selling for, but I looked at eBay prices and I saw these books graded going for like $200. I'm like, who the fuck is, like, why would you charge somebody that? Because for us that are going to chase that, that's our childhood for a lot of us. And knowing the people that got those 2 books, which is why I created the group to begin with, I was so happy to see that, because I'm like, I'd much rather have it go there than them go on eBay, overpay for the shit just for that nostalgia purpose. So it's really just wild to see how much people are charging for this on eBay, taking advantage, and people have been paying because they had that extra money. You know, I have a friend who may have almost more comics than me now than ever, and they had maybe 2 long boxes before COVID hit, and I think that they're at like at least 40 now because they've just been buying comics. And so they reached out this week, and he said, listen, can you help me sell these? And I said, you know, I've been telling you how long, you're not gonna be able to unload half of those and you're not gonna get back your money. He said, yeah, I know, my car needs some work. I said, we talked about this, man. Like, yeah, I'll help you sell them, but it's a long road ahead and it's not a quick one. Because, you know, when I look at spec books, I sit on them. I don't put them up right away. And so I told him he has a lot of those in his collection that he bought when Falcon Winter Soldier was on. He said, should I buy this? And I said, absolutely not. And he went ahead and bought them. And so I appreciate the trust that people put in me when they come to me. But if you do that with a friend, listen to that friend. If you're coming to them, it's for a reason. And I say it to any collector. It's not that I'm an expert. I've just been at it for a lot of years. I mean, I sell for countless people. I trade for countless people. I even do free appraisals. So it's one of those things where it's not a business to me. It's fun. It's a hobby. It's something that I pride myself on. So if you ever ask, what should I do? You don't have to listen to me, but I recommend it as opposed to blindly spending.
Now, you mentioned that claim you did this weekend. Did anyone claim that Hawkeye set you had up there?
They didn't actually. They should have. And I was surprised they didn't.
Can I retroactively claim it? I meant to go back this morning and look at it, but
you absolutely can. I was selling that for a friend too, and when it just sat there, I was like, should I just buy this for myself and it'll be my third set of that? Because I think I had it up for what, $5?
Yeah, that's
Uh,
what it was. And I usually like go through when you post the claim and I make a note of stuff I want to go back and look at and see if someone, knowing that I'm the least collector in that group outside of my brother, I tend to just look at what you have and I'm like, oh, I want that, which means someone's going to claim it. So I didn't even like rush to look back at it.
yeah, I mean, resale on that's already $25 for the issues I posted. And so when I had it so cheap, it was just because she wanted those comics gone. And I was like, all right, this is a fair price. And nobody budged. I said, either everybody's sick of all the shit I posted or nobody has any idea what's in these books. So
Well, I noticed the back half of what you posted. There's a lot of stuff that, at least when I looked last night, and it had been like 2 hours, no one had claimed. So I was like, oh, everyone's just gone to bed. They'll look later.
yeah, I didn't realize until I looked at the clock that I had posted books for 6 straight hours after researching values and figuring out what I would charge. And um, I went 6 nonstop hours of posting 120 something books.
That is insane.
And, you know, we talk about collecting, we talk about money. Of those books, only 6 were mine. The rest were for other people as a favor. And my 6 didn't even sell. So I made $0 on the entire day, but still helped people get rid of some stuff and accrue stuff and hook people up with stuff. And that's at the end of the day what it's all about. I know you saw my giveaway I'm doing for anybody who's ever bought from me. And it's going to be a graded autographed book, which means I had to spend at least $56 to get it graded. I had to pay for the autograph. You know, it's not going to be a cheap book. And that's just a thank you to those involved in the community, because I think that we all just make the community a better place. Um, and what's generally a toxic nerd environment, I've just fought so hard for so many years to eliminate that climate.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. It seems like the more niche and nerdy something gets, the more toxic it can get as well. Not that toxic fan bases don't exist everywhere, but it is kind of crazy that like if you are a nerd of any type, you're going to go into a mindset of being toxic about it. Like
Yeah.
we're supposed to love nerd culture because we love it, not because we want to be bullies about it.
Yeah, and you know, I saw a lot of it around like the Star Wars, like modern Star Wars fans, stuff like that, and it just trickles down. And um, the keyboard warriors of today year, I guess you could say, um, really just ruin a lot of shit for people who are in it for the fun. And um, people say stuff even when it doesn't align with what they actually believe, just to get a rise out of people and things like that. So, um, and people dick each other over. It's like this trying to get ahead because somebody has something you want that you didn't get. Which, you know, speculation has a lot to do with that, but that's why sites like We Got This Covered, which you know is my favorite, ruins so much for so many people,
Uh,
because it gets people talking and it gets people fighting over books, it gets people fighting over moments. And we're at a place in the hobby where everybody just needs to shut up, take a step back, remember why you got into the stuff that you're into, and really reflect on that and continue to be into it for that reason as opposed to the monetary reason or bragging rights. You know, and the same goes for like vinyl collecting. Vinyl collecting is getting very toxic. It's not something I'm a part of, but it's something I kind of watch from afar. And I know there are limited print records and things like that, but just watching how people interact, it's just like, what the fuck?
yeah, I mean, if you look at Record Store Day, which is now twice a year, knowing that this gets toxic, Record Store Day on the website lists not just the shops that are going to carry the Record Day stuff, but the stuff that promises not to price gouge. Now, of course, the people that go in and buy, you can't make the promise. But to me, it's always insane that there are shops out there that don't promise not to price gouge this event that's supposed to like celebrate records. And especially a Record Store Day release is already 10 to 30% more expensive than it would be if it was a non-Record Store Day release. So
Yeah, the fact that you have to do any sort of disclaimer, it's unreal to me. Even in the groups we do, we have to say like no flipping and stuff like that. The fact that you have to remind people not to be an asshole, it just pisses me off as a whole. And I mean, I have a life motto of just much love, but I really can't stand those fucking people that ruin it for the rest of us. And I've gone above and beyond out of my way to start groups to challenge people publicly and things like that to just stop it. And I'm just one person. I know that my words are often meaningless, but um, I'll publicly shame them. I will give stuff away for free in front of them to ruin their end game. I will do all that petty shit as a middle finger to their twisted motives.
And although that sounds petty, the fact that you give stuff away and everything, you'd mentioned that you'd be looking for something, even like you posted about your nephew and how much he loved Batman and Flash, and the number of people who were sending you books for your nephew, a kid they've never met, just because of who you are, is just insane.
Yeah, I'm really taken aback because I received so many messages even today as people just like, hey, I left a couple of books and I hope that's enough. And it's like, even the thought is enough. Like, hey, I looked, I don't have anything. Cool. Like, even the gesture of sharing it, it doesn't need anything in return. And so what I'm going to do Sunday is take him into Rhino's Comics, and Tim's going to present him with these books that were dropped off, and the kid's going to be blown away. His house just burned down. He just lost all his comics, and this community came together to get the kid comics. I think there's like 30 Batman books waiting for him. And nice. It's amazing that even before dropping off, people are messaging me like, is this okay? Like, the conditions, like, it's a 10-year-old kid just want to dive in. Just the thought of him is so great. So now
I have a Batman mask hanging up somewhere. I'm going to throw that in the box as well. I bought it at Target for a Halloween costume when it was a $6 mask and I had $10 on me. So I bought this mask and a bag of candy to give trick-or-treaters. That bag of candy did not last long. I apologize to any trick-or-treaters that came out after that, but I had moved to a new city and hadn't had a job yet. So, but I'm going to include that. What about graphic novels? Because I have just the Batman Returns again. Both my copies were destroyed and I got Returns again for $6 used, but I was going to throw that in there.
Yeah. It's, I look at like the reading level, and I think those graphic novels were a bit higher, but I think they'd be appreciated down the road. So it'd be a cool thing to have on a bookshelf for now. And then, when it's not about the flashy pictures, it's more about the intricate stories. That's actually a really good run. I think that he'll really appreciate that.
All right, I'll throw that in. And I was on the fence knowing he was younger about whether or not to throw Joker Wars in there, but if you think he can grow to appreciate it.
Yeah, I think so.
Especially because I really didn't like that run, that book anyway. That was
it's always
from Buck.
It's interesting with the runs from around those times, whether or not it's going to uphold for kids moving forward too. I never know how to approach some of those, when you look at the timeliness of certain books. But as I always tell people when I give them things, like, if you don't like this at some point, please find somebody who does. And people are generally really good about that.
And that people should be.
It's good to see.
I will not be including my Nightwing pop, though, because Nightwing and Tim Drake Robin are my two favorite DC characters, followed by Stephanie Brown. And I think Tim Drake and Stephanie Brown are the best couple in comic books.
So I actually have 20 pops ready to go home with him that I just pulled from my shelves, and I'm cool with it. I'll let him go. And he was into those, not as much as the comics. So thank God for that, because if he was a completist with all the pops, that'd be a rough one.
There are so many Batman variant pops out there.
Yeah. So he's good with the comics. I'm sending him with some pops, out of the box pops too, to match the comics and stuff. But seeing the community come together, man, that's what it's all about. That's one of the reasons why I just love the comic book world so much. And no, I'm just glad to be a part of it. I'm lucky to be a part of it. I'm lucky with our local Rochester community that we're all just so tight, and those who were in it for the money are no longer part of the community. So,
and really quickly, like, we've gone a while now, but I just want you do Pops for Patients New York. I know, like, Pops for Patients is a national thing, and you, for collecting, giving back goes hand in hand with you. So let's just put over Pops for Patients real quick.
Yeah, so P4P New York, a few years ago, Tim, who you'll see on our No Coast Defenders, him and his girlfriend Jeanette and myself were like, how do we give back to charity and stuff like that? And Tim knew of Pops for Patients, and we reached out to Randy Lee from Tennessee. I can't say his name without saying that. It's Randy Lee, who is co-founder of Pops for Patients. And basically, they started giving pops out to kids in the hospitals, and it just took off. And it's gotten co-sponsored by WWE wrestlers, professional athletes, like local celebrities, things like that throughout the years. And it's just to unite kids with some smiles and hard times. So we founded a chapter in New York, and it took off immediately. We partnered with Vision Nissan here for their reason for the season, and they just give out to kids all over the area, different organizations. Then we partnered with Cure Rochester. We did their picnic and literally handed out pops and toys and race cars and books to children who are surviving cancer and their family members, because it's not just a one-person battle; it's the whole family. And so through donations, we were able to give out to that. So we're in year 3 right now, and we've doubled our donations each year. It kind of took a downturn this year simply because nobody knew anything was going on. People are hesitant, and I get all that. So um, I've been buying a lot of the ones for this year when I see things or when I see somebody like, hey, falling hard times, I need this. I'm like, I'll buy all that for the kids. But really, we're not just about pops anymore. We get toys, race cars, art supplies, books. I started buying comic books that are unread and comic book sleeves to get to the kids, and anything that's going to bring a smile to a kid in this age, we are collecting as long as it's unused, unopened. Germs are a concern, so we have to think about that too. And I have had people gift things that are used or out of the package, and I do find homes for them. I work with a couple women's shelters. I work with a couple of classrooms with working with children with behavioral issues, and so I'm able to give those to those classrooms to use them, so it doesn't go on being unused. It's used. Everything is used for whatever purpose. I always repurpose it. We just want to bring smiles to kids in the New York area and across the nation too. We are affiliated with other organizations, so we partner a lot with Rhode Island. They do a May the 4th event, so every year I send Star Wars stuff to them. Just trying to bring smiles to kids in a world that's just rougher by the day. So I appreciate the plug. I could talk for days, but P4P New York. Find us on Facebook, Instagram. Just a simple share is more than enough help.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, it's founded out of Tennessee. It's all across the country, so easy to find something local for you if you're not in the New York area. So, but last question about that, and then I'll let you go because it's late where you are. What characters do you find, or even like general runs of characters, do you find the kids seem to light up for a little bit more than others?
The child, absolutely. Everybody loves, he's lovingly referred to as Baby Yoda. Any Star Wars, really, they rave about that. If you throw a Hulk in there, people love that. And to be quite honest, the Deadpool pops are a lot of fun. And though we don't like to take stuff with weapons and things like that because of the different age groups, and it's kind of one of the
Bob
premises.
Ross is holding a paintbrush, so
yeah, there's a lot of fun to be had with the Deadpool pops. They go a long way for everybody. But what we found is during the Cure Holiday event, we handed out comic books for the first time, and my God, the kids like, this is awesome. So comic books somehow are gravitating. There's actually children's comic books, not our mainstream titles, or even like Thor and Loki right now have Double Trouble, which is one that's aimed towards kids, and like our LCS Rhinos has a whole kids section, and so there's a lot of stuff that kids really enjoy reading. And really anything though, the kids that we work with, it's the fact that we thought about them is bigger than anything else. Just seeing that somebody cares outside of a hospital room is huge.
Well, I know one of the big things WWE has always done right is the Make-A-Wish and the work they do with children's hospitals, and especially like, do those pops hit with the kids?
They do, if we know about them. Often the ones that we get donated are like Finn Balor and stuff. And I mean, at one point,
The Demon Finn Balor.
Yeah, I think I had like 35 at one point, and at some point, kids stopped getting excited about that. I don't really know him. I don't follow wrestling a lot, but I don't know if you're familiar with Samoa Joe.
Samoa Joe is just amazing.
Yeah, he's a big time partner of P4P. He's actually friends with Randy, who co-founded it. So he's a big time player. I know, like anything John Cena, that kind of stuff's big.
Which makes sense since he's granted more wishes than any other organization himself. So
yeah, actually, there was an autograph hanging on my wall because our neighbors went to make a wish for their daughter for wrestling, and John Cena was there, and our neighbor requested an autograph for Zoe, so it's now hanging on our comic book wall. It's just a random WWE sheet with a John Cena autograph.
That's awesome. All right, thank you so much, Dan. I hope some people took some information out of this. I took that I should definitely stay out of speculating.
I mean, I just want to throw out if anybody has any questions or anything like that. I'm not an expert by any means, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Locally, I tend to do that, and I've also had people reach out just from across pages. We people from other states, stuff like that, where I've taken a look at things, and I'll look at value. I get messages constantly. I'm happy to answer. So reach out. I'm Dan Ken on Facebook. It's probably the easiest way to reach out to me. But I'm happy to help if you're on the fence about anything.
All right, and I'm sure you saw, but I went and hit claim underneath that book, so I will be PayPaling
Yeah.
you some money here in a moment.
All right, my friend. Thank you for having me. This has been a blast.
Yeah, thank you. I will see you Monday when we talk Loki, which
Indeed.
new episode drops in a few hours. So
Indeed. All right, friend. You have a great day.
thanks, you too.